The nature versus nurture debate has always intrigued me. That's why I chose the correlation between child abuse and death row inmates as the topic for my master's thesis. Is it reasonable to believe someone can be born evil? Is it reasonable to believe someone can turn evil if abused and neglected? Personally, though there may be some genetic or organic factors that may determine what a person can become, I don't believe anyone is actually born evil. But how much of this is developed by the way we are treated by those around us? Do parents or caregivers have the power to determine what we become? Of course, we as humans develop the ability to make decisions, but a child raised being taught they can accomplish anything they set their mind to yields a far different outcome than the child who is told they are worthless and are denied any sense of self-esteem. This documentary is not meant to be an endorsement for or argument against capital punishment, or to diminish the lives of the 4 people Mark Spotz brutally murdered, but rather to recognize that the way children are abused, nurtured, loved, or abandoned plays quite possibly the largest role in who that child becomes. Six-year-old Mark Spotz and his 7-year-old brother Dustin were in school, kindergarten and first grade respectively. Mark Spotz barely had 1 month of school under his belt. While the two were in school, their mother Jean was at the office of Clearfield County Children and Youth. Jean no longer wanted her children. She confessed that she had never wanted them, and they had never been anything but an unpleasant burden to her. The caseworkers attempted to talk Jean out of this harsh decision and begged her to think it through. She stated there was no need to worry, she had thought this through. She shared that she had discussed this very topic with the 2 young men who were living with her. She had met them in a bar a few nights before, and her pastor. She insisted her mind was made up. She had decided she never wanted to see her boys again, and asked that a caseworker pick them up at school. She was done, hands washed, no longer a mother if she had ever been one to begin with. The caseworkers were at the elementary school at the end of the day. They told the children as gently as possible that they were not going home. They tried to cushion the blow, but how could they? The caseworkers took the children for ice cream, then to the hospital for physicals as required before taking them to the Children's Home Orphanage in Clearfield County. At the end of a long day, after seeing the children were settled in, at least as settled as a 6- and 7-year-old that had been abandoned by their mother could be, the caseworkers ended their day by documenting this to be the most emotionally disturbing time either caseworker had ever experienced. The caseworkers slept little that night. The boys' questions ran through their minds. When were they going home? The next day, the caseworkers returned to the children's home to check on the boys. They documented that the boys were very hurt but had each other and were coping. 6-year-old Mark hugged one caseworker for a very long time. Both boys had many questions about their future. 2 weeks later, Jean Redden entered the picture. Jean is Mark and Dustin's maternal grandmother. Jean was not thrilled that her daughter threw her grandsons away. Both boys had issues, to be sure. Yet, Jean told her daughter she would raise the boys. There was no need for them to be in agency care. The plan was agreed upon by Children and Youth and the boys' mother, and Jean Redden was to provide a permanent home for the boys. Though one would like to believe Jean accepted this agreement for the good of her sons, her actions spoke louder than her words. With this arrangement, Jean did not have her children getting in the way of her promiscuity and drug use, but could easily demand her children back when she needed to increase her cash assistance and food stamps. For 2 years, the boys resided with their grandmother, and by all accounts, they were loved and nurtured. Jean did not speak to or visit her sons in the 2 years they resided with her mother. During this time, Jean commented to Children and Youth that someday she may be settled enough to want the boys back. She refused to allow her mother to adopt the boys in the meantime. The boys had been living with Jean Redden for 2 years. At that time, a caseworker from Children and Youth contacted the home to schedule a follow-up visit. Jean Redden informed the caseworker the boys were no longer with her. Their mother had come for them 2 months earlier, and Jean added that she felt the living environment was much healthier and she saw no need for continued agency involvement. It remains known only to Jean Redden why she gave her daughter so much power over the boys and allowed her to demand them back at will instead of fighting for them. She had to have known in her heart that the living environment was not healthier, rather it had deteriorated. Jean refused to give the caseworker the address to the home where her daughter and grandsons were currently living. She stated the boys' biological father, Danny Spotz, was due to be released from state prison, and she did not want him to know where the boys were. Please come back next week for the next installment of my documentary Spree Killer, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.